April 8, 1943. 27,000 feet above Caen, France. Fog curled around the wings of a British Hawker Hurricane squadron as they chased a formation of German Heinkel HE-111 bombers. At that altitude, the engines roared like thunder. The skies streaked with white contrails and flashes of gunfire. Lieutenant James Barlow dove sharply, finger on the trigger, when suddenly, silence. The mighty Rolls-Royce Merlin engine went dead. It wasn't an electrical fault or enemy fire. It was something every British pilot dreaded: fuel starvation during a dive. Panic surged through his body as the aircraft plummeted, gravity clawing at every bolt and cable. James fought the controls, struggling to restart the engine, watching the French countryside rush up toward him. Then a cough, a shudder, and the Merlin roared back to life. He pulled up hard, escaping death by a heartbeat. He wasn't the only one. That same mechanical flaw haunted hundreds of RAF pilots. While the German Messerschmitt Bf-109 had a direct fuel injection system that worked perfectly in steep dives, British aircraft still relied on carburetors, which choked whenever the plane went nose down. In those split seconds, engines stalled and lives were lost. In the workshops of southern England, engineers argued, commanders worried, and mechanics blamed bad luck. But no one imagined that salvation would come not from a general or an ace pilot, but from a woman in a gray engineer's uniform, hair neatly tied under a steel helmet. Her name was Beatrice Shilling. At the Royal Aircraft Establishment, Beatrice studied test data with an unblinking gaze. She knew the solution wasn't rebuilding the engine, it was something smaller, simpler, smarter. Few men believed her ideas could change the war, but they were about to learn that one woman, armed with a wrench and a mind sharper than steel, could rewrite the rules of aerial combat. A tiny metal disc, no larger than a shilling coin, would soon save hundreds of pilots and change the skies forever. A cold morning in February 1943, inside the research hangar at Farnborough Airfield, engines roared on test benches. The air smelled of oil and hot metal. Amid the chaos, Beatrice Shilling sat at her workbench, pen flying across the page as the mighty Rolls-Royce Merlin engines spun before her. She'd read the reports, pilots nearly dying mid-dive, and she knew the real enemy wasn't the Luftwaffe. It was physics. When negative G forces hit, fuel floods the carburetor, then cuts off completely, she explained. If we control the flow, even slightly, we control the problem. A total redesign of the Merlin was impossible. The war couldn't wait. So Beatrice conceived a brilliantly simple fix, a tiny brass disc with a precisely measured hole inserted into the fuel line. That single orifice would regulate fuel flow during negative G, stopping both flooding and starvation. A hole no bigger than a coin, she said, but it might just save the RAF. When she presented her idea to senior engineers, they laughed. A washer in the fuel line, that's hardly engineering. Undeterred, Beatrice installed it herself and fired up the test engine. At first, everything seemed normal. Then she simulated a dive. Everyone held their breath. Pressure dropped, and for the first time, the engine didn't die. It roared steadily, defying gravity itself. Silence fell, followed by applause. Beatrice removed her goggles and smiled faintly. Seems a lady can save pilots too. Within days, the RAF adopted the design under the name Miss Shilling's Orifice. It could be installed in minutes, anywhere, even at the front. In just 1 week, Beatrice personally fitted the device to 93 aircraft across southern England. Pilots greeted her with awe. "You've saved our lives, Miss Shilling," one said. She replied softly, "No, you're the ones carrying us to victory." Weeks later, the difference was undeniable. RAF pilots who once feared diving at German fighters now did so confidently. the British regained the vertical advantage that had been lost since 1940. On May 15, 1943, over the French coast, squadrons of Spitfire Mk5 clashed with Bf-109s. Previously, such dogfights ended with British engines stalling mid-dive. But now, with Miss Shilling's Orifice installed, the Merlins ran flawlessly. Lieutenant Ralph Dickinson wrote in his report, "I dove from 10,000 feet at 600 kilometers an hour, and the engine purred like a lion. It's as if the aircraft was reborn." That day, the RAF downed 14 German fighters for the loss of only 2 of their own, a ratio unseen since the Battle of Britain. Command recognized what Beatrice had achieved, not just a fix, but a strategic turning point. In hangars and bases, her name spread like legend. Some mechanics pinned her photo on the wall, scrawling beneath it, "The lady who made diving safe." Soon, American squadrons flying P-51 Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts adopted her modification as well. Across the Allied front, hundreds of planes now soared with her invention inside their fuel lines. The statistics were staggering. Over 400 aircraft saved from mid-air engine failure in the following months, thousands of pilots returning home alive because of one tiny piece of brass. When asked for interviews, Beatrice declined. She wasn't after fame. "I don't fight in the sky," she once said. "I just keep them flying." By late 1943, she was awarded the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for distinguished service. But her most treasured honor came in December, a handwritten note from dozens of pilots. "We owe our lives to you." By the war's end, the age of propellers was giving way to jet engines. But the name Beatrice Shilling still echoed through RAF history, not as a symbol of power, but of ingenuity. She hadn't built new engines. She'd built trust between engineers and pilots. After 1945, Beatrice returned to research at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, studying the emerging jet revolution. Yet outside the lab, she was still a speed addict. On weekends, she raced her Norton 500cc motorcycle, overtaking men twice her size, earning the nickname, "the woman faster than her own engines." Despite her fame, she stayed humble. No memoirs, no glory. When the Ministry of Defense invited her to lecture at the Air Academy, she smiled and said, "Let the sky teach them. It's the best instructor." In 1969, a veteran pilot visited her office and told her quietly, "Without you, I'd never have seen my children again." She replied, "Without your courage, none of us would have a future." She retired that same year, but never lost her spark. Even in her later years, she attended engineering conferences, reminding young minds that greatness isn't in complexity, it's in simple ideas that save lives. When she passed away in 1990, British newspapers wrote, "One woman kept Britain's planes in the sky." Today, in the Imperial War Museum in London, a small brass disc sits in a glass case. Below it, a plaque reads, "A piece of metal the size of a shilling saved the skies of Europe." From a small workshop in Farnborough, Beatrice Shilling changed the course of history. She never fired a bullet, never wore a general's stripes, but she made sure the men who did could come home alive. Because she understood a truth that outlives every war. Victory doesn't always belong to strength. Sometimes it belongs to brilliance.